Since 1917, the Pulitzer Prize Board has been awarding annual prizes to outstanding contributions in journalism, drama, literature, and music. When he established these prizes in his will, Joseph Pulitzer intended for there to only be 4 in journalism. However, he also acknowledged that the categories could expand, establishing the advisory board and giving it, quote, power in its discretion to suspend or to change any subject or subjects, substituting, however, others in their places. And change they did. Almost all of the Pulitzer Prize categories in journalism are different from what they were originally. There have been a lot of additions, including cartoons in 1922, photography in 1942, and audio reporting in 2020. In 2007, the board allowed online journalism to be eligible for all its reporting categories, reflecting one of the biggest changes in the journalism field. With the development of the internet, not only could journalists send stories to the public faster, but they were no longer limited to just text and images in telling these stories. They could use way more images, interactive graphs, video, audio, and giant pivotal quotes that take up their entire screen without wasting the publication's money. My main question will be, did these changes simply reflect changing methods of media, or did they reflect and foreshadow a fundamental change in the way journalists tell stories? I will be analyzing 3 Pulitzer-winning pieces, one that relies mainly on text and images like a standard print article would, one that utilizes more digital interactive elements, and one that uses solely audio. I will be breaking down the narratives themselves to see if words still remain the primary way that journalists tell stories, or if other features, like sound, images, and graphics, are becoming as important or even more important than text. A Boy of Unusual Vision by Alice Steinbach was published on May 27, 1984 in the Baltimore Sun magazine. As any print journalist will tell you, when you're writing for print, space is everything. I was not able to find any information on how much space Steinbach was allowed for this story, but it is still clear that she maximizes the space she was given. Look at this first page, for instance. Here's the kid you're going to be learning about for however long it takes you to read this. Here's his name, and here's a caption about him. Calvin Stanley is a 4th grader at Cross Country Elementary School. He rides a bike, watches TV, plays video games, and does just about everything other 10-year-old boys do, except see. And that is exactly what you're getting. Just from an image and a caption, Steinbach tells you that for the next 11 pages, we're going to be looking into the life of this 10-year-old blind boy. But there's another, more subtle detail on the first page. One of the first pictures of Calvin we see is of him writing his name on a chalkboard. This foreshadows the rest of the story. Not only are we going to meet Calvin, but we are going to see how he experiences himself and the world. Something interesting I noticed is the way the text itself is formatted in the story. On every page there are these very large drop caps to signify a new part of the story. After the introduction, we talk about Calvin's infancy, how he's growing up, the moment he really knew he was blind. I will never be able to see your face, or Daddy's face, he told his mother. Then in the next giant letter, we switch perspectives and we're talking about the mother, and you'll see here that the story uses pictures at exactly the right moments. Like I said before, space matters, especially in print, and this story uses it varyingly and effectively. Before it hits you with a page full of text, which is a bit overwhelming, it eases you in with half a page of text, a big drop cap, and a picture. Here's the next part of the story. Here's who we're going to be talking about. Get ready. Enjoy. And once you're done reading that page, you're probably done with text for a while. So here's a bunch more pictures of Calvin going about his life. Why tell you all the obvious details when we can just show you? We can spend less time describing what Calvin looks like when swinging a baseball bat if we just show you. And we can instead use that time to describe what it sounds like, what Calvin's reaction is, what's going on in his head. The importance of the words in this story, though, is kind of metatextual. Because not only are the words essential to communicating Calvin's life to us, they are essential to Calvin. There are some things that he needs words to know, but there are other things that he just doesn't need words for. Not everything has to be described like that. What Calvin can't see, he can't see the small, pretty girl sitting opposite him, the one who was wearing little rows of red, yellow, and blue barrettes shaped like airplanes in her braided hair. He can't see the line of small green plants growing in yellow pots all along the sunny windowsill. And he can't see Mrs. Jackson in her rose-pink suit and pink enameled earrings shaped like little swans. Were they really shaped like little swans? He will ask later. But Calvin can feel the warm spring breeze, invisible to everyone's eyes, not just his, blowing in through the window, and he can hear the tapping of a young oak tree's branches against the window. He can hear Mrs. Jackson's pleasant musical voice, and later if you ask him what she looks like, he will say, "She's nice." But best of all, Calvin can read and spell and do fractions and follow the classroom work in his specially prepared Braille books. He is smart, and he can do everything the rest of his class can do. Except C. Written by Scott Farwell of the Dallas Morning News and presented online in 8 parts in 2012, The Girl in the Closet tells the story of Lauren Cavanaugh, who was abused and locked in a closet for 6 years of her life after slipping through the cracks of Texas's adoption and child welfare systems.
It was considered one of the 3rd worst abuse cases where the child didn't die.
The one thing I'll never forget about that child's her dimples. She just smiled. You walked in and I told her who I was, and she just smiles and says hi, like nothing had happened.
I looked at her and I told her, "I'm Officer McLean. I'm here to take care of you. I'm here to take you out of here." And she just smiled. She just smiled at me.
Could you open the door? Why not? Do you know why?
They put a chair behind it.
Oh, okay. Who did? Who put a chair behind it?
Barbie.
All right.
Well, it was horrifying.
Though it was also published in print, the online version offers more creativity in its telling. It takes the texts and image strategies Steinbach utilizes in her piece and elevates them. And the main way it does that is through speed. You click on the story, and oh cute, there's Lauren. Then you see the caption, almost unnoticeable over the giant picture, and you realize that this picture was taken the day 20-month-old Lauren was given back to her abusive birth parents. And then you see the title fade in, The Girl in the Closet. And then you wonder, what is going to happen to this poor girl? And then you scroll down, and you find out. Lauren is alone in the dark. She's naked, sitting cross-legged in her own filth, eyes focused on a sliver of light. It's all she has, that light. It glows from underneath a locked closet door, and Lauren's discovered, if she stares at it long enough, her mind will open a portal to another place. Doctors say that's how she survived all the years of starvation and solitude and sexual torture. They call it disassociation, the psyche's ability to float away from the pain. Lauren calls it her escape hatch. The text clearly serves the same purpose it does in A Boy of Unusual Vision. The story wouldn't be there without it. But unlike the other feature, the text is supplemented. There are summary quotes. There's videos next to descriptions of events. When characters are introduced, you can hear their voices. In my opinion, what makes this story stand out from A Boy of Unusual Vision, besides the subject matter, are the interactive galleries embedded into the page. This not only allows more images to be displayed with less space, but it immerses the reader in the story. Instead of being faced with Lauren's situation all at once, the reader is given more control over the speed at which the details unravel. Lauren's early months, photo evidence of her abuse, the conditions in which she was forced to live, the reader can reveal these images as quickly or slowly as they want. There is never too much to process, and yet each picture is impactful. At one point, prosecutor Patricia Hogue speaks at the trial of Barbara Atkinson, Lauren's birth mother, saying, "I want you to put yourself in the dark, the light switch too high for you to reach, and just think about her, day after day after day in the dark, as she listened while her brothers and sisters played out in the trailer house, and rode their bikes and played outside in the sunshine and walked on the grass. And through the immersive, condensed detail, you almost can." So let's take all of these images, all of this color, this parallax scrolling, and get rid of it. Sound. You take it for granted sometimes. And yet sound is such an integral part of the stories that are told to us every day. In broadcast journalism, there are terms like nat sound and room noise to better put you in an environment. Radio existed even before television, so there was a time in which all broadcast news was communicated through audio. Even your friend telling you a story about what happened to them that day, that's storytelling through audio too. In 2020, the Pulitzer Prize Board created the audio reporting category.
I'm Dana Kennedy, Administrator of the Pulitzer Prizes. Today, the Pulitzer Prize Board is pleased to announce a new journalism prize category for the 2020 prize cycle, audio reporting. The renaissance of audio journalism in recent years has given rise to an extraordinary array of nonfiction storytelling. To recognize the best of that work, the Pulitzer Board is launching an experimental category to honor it. The new prize will be awarded for a distinguished example of audio journalism that serves the public interest, characterized by revelatory reporting and illuminating storytelling.
The first recipient of this new award was The Out Crowd, an episode of the podcast This American Life. This episode, which features reporters Molly O'Toole and Emily Green and host Ira Glass, covers how the Trump administration made it incredibly difficult for people to gain asylum in America, putting millions of people in danger by sending them back to Mexico. It covers asylum seekers being forced back into their harmful communities, as well as the asylum agents who are trapped by the system and frequently throw up in the shower thinking about all the people they have turned away from safety. How do you cover such a multifaceted story in an hour with no text and no images?
As Aviva sits there with Darwin's mom, Elizabeth, he runs off for 15, 20 minutes at a time, and then returns with cash.
Ay, Dios mío, santo Dios.
$5.
$5. She hugs him.
Ay, tan lindo. Muchachito.
Darwin runs to their tent to pull out all the money he saved and show Aviva. $279.
The start of the episode sounds like a print and broadcast story combined. There's establishing details and narration that paints a vivid emotional picture. But instead of print quotes that you have to read in your own voice, you get to hear their own voices.
A man quietly approaches and just kind of hovers nearby, listening. And she says, "Atrás, atrás, atrás. Look behind you," and covers her face.
Atrás, 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 están viendo. Atrás. No hay que hablar de eso. Están atrás.
You can't talk about this. He's behind.
And sometimes, like when Emily Green tells the stories of these desperate migrants, it gets pretty emotional.
I've done lots of interviews with people like David, migrants in really difficult situations. This one felt especially hard. I think just seeing a father fall apart in front of his 11-year-old son.
Y nunca me escucharon, solo los dieron el documento para venir a una cita aquí, pero yo no puedo regresar.
David says he wanted to ask for asylum in the U.S., but the agents didn't listen to him.
After the introduction, there's music. Subtle, but it's still there as the setting of a border camp is established. Just like other features, we start with a profile of one person. Then we expand to more detail. Darwin remains the focus of this part, as Glass explains the context of Trump's Remain in Mexico policy and the improvised border camp set up for those seeking asylum. Throughout the episode, there are both scripted and unscripted moments. Narration is interspersed with interviews. Again, just like in a print article. At one point, Nurse Helen Perry is talking to Glass, and in the middle of her statement says hello to someone passing. Completely unprompted, and yet a normal thing for people to do, and you're there again. The sound-only format presents unique challenges, though. One of the biggest is that this story contains anonymous sources. How do you profile an anonymous source, though, if their voice is pretty much the only way they can communicate? This podcast uses actors, and reporter Molly O'Toole breaks character in a way to tell you this.
Oh my God, here's where I'm gonna be real with you. This is an asylum officer we're calling Ursula. This isn't her voice. She's afraid of getting fired, so we had an actor copy what she said as closely as possible.
Something I found interesting while listening to all this is the music. I am not an auditory learner, and I worried how much I would be able to pay attention while listening to this. To maintain audience's focus, however, the podcast slips in subtle music whenever someone is about to explain something complicated. It makes the words less droning, and by extension, more important in the reader's minds.
All three officers say they raised concerns and got roughly the same response. Just get out there and do your job. What they found out soon enough was just how radical a change the new MPP interviews were from the old credible fear screenings. For starters, not everyone would get an interview. Only the people who volunteered that they were scared to go back to Mexico would. If they got an interview, under MPP, asylum seekers would have to prove that they'd be harmed in Mexico, not their home country. And not just any harm. They can't just be threatened by gangs or the police. They have to be threatened by gangs or police or whoever because of some very specific reasons laid out in U.S. law. Because of their nationality, race, religion, politics, or being part of a particular social group, like LGBTQ.
In 1916, linguist Ferdinand de Saussure proposed a theory of language that emphasized decontextualizing language when analyzing it. A science which studies linguistic structure is not only able to dispense with other elements of language, but is possible only if those other elements are kept separate, he wrote. In a way, this is what this analysis is doing. If you took away all the multimedia context, all the sound, all the music, all the videos in these pieces, and just had words, would you still have a solid story? And in all three cases, the answer is yes. You can understand Calvin and his life without knowing what he looks like. You can read about Lauren and what she went through without seeing galleries of the closet she was locked in. You can go on This American Life's website and read the transcript for the Out Crowd, and it would sound pretty much the same as a print piece. When you boil them down, they're all feature articles underneath the multimedia. What the multimedia is doing then is facilitating the distribution of this information, making it easier to digest in readers' minds. The writing is still there, but what is changing is how to make it more palatable to people. With the development of technology and the speeding up of information distribution, reporters have to find different ways to maintain their readers' attention. Stories have become larger, more kinetic, more portable, but their cores have remained the same. Though multimedia has a considerable impact on the effectiveness of these stories, good writing still remains the foundation of their longevity.